The new StarCraft 2 balance patch dropped, and it's been chaos all over the community. Terrans are dancing in Psystorm, Zergs are rage quitting. Beautiful disasters are everywhere. Now what I've got for you today is what is supposed to be the best series that has been played on the brand new balance patch so far. It's time for a Zerg versus Protoss. Spotting right here in the top right hand corner, playing with the red Zerg pieces, we have none other than a Rogue. His opponent already having a chit-chat, playing with the blue Protoss pieces. He, of course, goes by the username of Zoun. Now, this is what we've all been waiting for. I've heard a lot of complaining about the new patch. Admittedly, I haven't seen that many games just yet, but it seems like a lot of matches are ending quite early. This is usually what happens when we get significant changes to the game. Something changes, and well, if you make one little mistake, it can just mean the end of the series pretty much right away. StarCraft 2 is absolutely brutal like that, but these games, they do go the distance, and well, as you may have already noticed, we are on brand new TLMC, the Team Liquid map contest maps. So this particular one is called Magnetic North. We're going to be able to look at the new maps, we're going to be able to judge the new balance patch. There have been a lot of updates made to the balance patch as well. So this particular series was played like 2 days ago. And since then, there have been more changes again, too. A few bug fixes. I saw that the Ghost now has an additional 25 HP. There's more and more changes all over the place. But as units come out, I will try to give you my thoughts and the changes as I understand them. Because honestly, the list is pretty long. I'm not exactly sure how much the meta in Zerg vs. Protoss is going to change. Especially in the early game. I guess in the early game, the biggest thing to note is that the energy recharge ability has been nerfed. So that ability is not quite as powerful as it once used to be. You now have to pay more energy basically to achieve the same goal, and maybe that would make, for example, Oracle openers slightly less popular. But the thing is, back when energy recharge wasn't even an ability in the game, Stargate openers already were the norm. So, yeah, I'm not surprised here to see Zoun still opening up with that Stargate. It's just a very nice tool to have, right? Oracles just give you so much vision. They give you so much scouting potential. They can deal damage. They can be used defensively. They can carry you from the early game all the way until the very late game. And they're a unit that just, especially if you're good at the game, seems to be an absolute no-brainer. Now, real quick, as we look around the map, is there anything worth noting about Magnetic North? I do believe I saw this map when I first had a look at the Team Liquid map contest finalists. I did, by the way, do a review of all of those maps as well on my second channel, so if you're interested, that is youtube.com/morloco. Either way, this map, and honestly most of the maps with this TLMC, not all of them, but about 80% of them were reasonably normal and relatively straightforward, so I'm not expecting anything crazy here. But of course, when you're looking at a screenshot, it is very different than actual games being played. And sometimes maps that look very ordinary turn out to be pretty nuts. Now, what exactly has been changed for Zerg? One interaction I would really love to see is the new Microbial Shroud in combination with Ultralisks. Normally, Ultras absolutely suck. Because as soon as Protoss sees them, they will make a couple of robos and usually pump out a bunch of Immortals, and Ultralisks just sort of die. We've seen this time and time again. Obviously, sometimes Ultras are used in this matchup, mostly as like a surprise when Zerg can suddenly appear on the map with fully armored Ultras and Protoss doesn't know. That's when Ultras can be quite good, but if you can see them coming in from a little while away, you can prepare as a Protoss player and shut them down. Now, Microbial Shroud has been updated, and it's honestly a massive change. It's the ability that once upon a time replaced the infested Terran on the Infestor, and ever since it has replaced it, we have rarely seen it in games. It's considered to be, at least up until this point, the absolute worst ability in all of StarCraft. It has now quickly grown to an ability that many people complain about, because the new Microbial Shroud also reduces any damage from ranged by 50%. We do have the Oracles now swooping in, getting a little bit of damage done. Zoun trying his best. Missing a few shots there, but 3 drones is not terrible. This is, of course, played on the Korean server, since both of the players are from Korea, so we can't be blaming Ping for that. I also, on the second channel, did do like a deep analysis. That was super sloppy, Zoun. Come on, man. I did do a deep analysis as well on the way that the new Microbial Shroud works and the way that the damage actually gets calculated. And long story short, Immortals will deal significantly less damage to Ultralisks than they did before, as long as the Ultras are underneath a Microbial Shroud. So I'm hoping secretly that is, I don't know, I haven't seen these games, right? But I'm hoping secretly that is something we are going to be seeing throughout this series. I saw that the replays are relatively long, so only time will tell. Either way, okay. The Adepts are going to shade into the main base, and for now, Zoun really is just focusing on that early game damage. He has, of course, secured a third base already. Rogue not really making any crazy changes, by the way. He did go for the +1 melee here reasonably quickly. Lair is now also finished up, and we do have a Baneling nest. Yep, centrifugal hooks. They've made a reversal to a previous change. So, centrifugal hooks back in the day used to give you Baneling speed, and then also +5 HP on Banelings. Then, some time ago, they removed the +5 HP, and now it's back once again. The big change for this particular matchup is that the Baneling should now be able to actually go through a Psionic Storm without it just straight up dying. I believe that with the way that the ticks work, and they've changed this again last night as of me casting this. Anyways, the way that the tick rate on the storm works, the Baneling should survive with 1 HP if they roll through a storm straight up. Although I believe now with the most recent version of the game, aka the one that is live right now, and maybe by the time that this is up on YouTube, they've updated it again. But anyways, they have changed it so that the Baneling survives with slightly more HP yet again. Now, one of the very big changes to this patch is this research right over here. Sonic Storm coming up for the Protoss. It's very odd. When they first proposed the new balance patch, when they first went, well, and published the PTR, I made a video about that as well. Man, I've been apparently a newscaster here. I've been covering everything. Either way, I did make a video about it, and they mentioned that they are changing the way Storm works, and it seemed like a massive nerf. They since decided to go back and made it better than it was before. So I'm not exactly sure what the thought process behind some of the changes is, but only time will tell here. Long story short, the High Templar now have a shorter cast range. However, the radius of the ability is quite a bit bigger. Meaning that, yes, the cast range is shorter, but obviously since the radius is bigger, you should still have a similar amount of reach. And while Storm deals slightly less damage per tick, it lasts longer. So you could now, for example, use it quite effectively on a group of lurkers, which seems to be what Rogue is going for. Sometimes in the past, you could sort of just sit inside of the storm and just wait it out, because the lurkers are relatively slow to unburrow. It's something that you certainly cannot do anymore right now as a Zerg. At least I don't think so. So we should be able to see that interaction here in just a moment. Rogue going into 5 Dropper Lords already. And I'm assuming we're going to be dropping Zerglings, but maybe it'll be a drop of Lurkers instead. Speaking of the new patch, by the way, Blizzard did once more introduce a couple of new changes. So real quick, as this game is still relatively passive, they had a pretty interesting bug on the Ghost. So the Ghost has been changed. It's gone from 3 supply to 2 supply, from 100 HP to 125 HP, and it's got the light armored tag. Anyway, they changed this on the unit. However, they forgot changing it on the female Ghost skin. The female Ghost skin, for some reason, was still at 3 supply each, rather than the intended 2. So they changed it last night, and now the female Ghost skin grants 2 supply. So it's supposed to cost 2 supply. The female Ghost skin now is functioning as a small little mini Overlord. Not entirely relevant for this particular matchup, but a very strange bug fix. So they accidentally entered the number +2 rather than a -2. So it's supposed to take 2 supply, and now it's granting 2 supply. I'm sure they'll fix that again in the near future. Admittedly, it's hard to change games. Anyways, here we go. Lurker attack is coming in. Does Rogue have enough to outmaneuver his opponent? Well, the storms are going to be critical. So look at how long that storm lasts. Look at how long it lasts! My god, it just keeps lasting, man. I wish I could last that. Anyways, the lurkers, though, are still dealing damage. Rogue was supposed to back up there. He did, but there's still Zerglings going to town inside of that mineral line. A couple of new lurkers showing up. And the problem is, right now, sure, the range on that ability is shorter, right? And Zoun can't really get over here very easily with the High Templar, although that storm is juicy. Get out of there, dude. Lucky for him, he does have a bunch of Tempest out, but the Nexus is going to go down. Keep in mind that it's difficult to draw conclusions from just these individual games, right? There's a very real possibility here, for example, that Zoun maybe should have delayed the Tempest transition, or maybe he should have done it quicker if he wanted to keep that expansion alive. And it is going to take at least several weeks for these changes to really settle. And until that point, of course, it's going to be very much so up in the air. I know that a lot of people will be very quick to jump to conclusions when it comes to any patch changes, but I think it's important to give these sort of things some time. Either way, we are going to go into the Immortal right now. And normally, if we get to this point, Zerg basically can never consider Ultralisks ever again. Oh, one other big change, actually, for Zerg is a bug fix to the Broodlord. They have since updated the game, like I said again last night. They have now nerfed the Broodlord movement speed in this particular version. So this series we played a few days ago. The Broodlord does not have the nerfed movement speed. They did a bug fix that effectively increased the damage output of the Broodlords by like 50%. So some crazy changes are happening to this game right now, and I am kind of loving it. Obviously, a lot of people are complaining. That storm lasts so long. What in the world? You can notice that it doesn't deal as much damage per tick, but it's still something that needs to be respected. The mothership also did get a couple of changes. First off, we got the new build animation of the mothership. Kind of cool, right? You can kind of see the outline of it. This was also bugged with one of the mothership skins and one of the Nexus skins. Supposedly, that has since been fixed. Either way, it now is a little bit slower, so obviously it is no longer abductable. We haven't been able to use Neural Parasite on it from the Infestor for many years, and because of that, Zergs have been struggling to deal with it. Corruptors are usually an absolute necessity, and I think honestly a movement speed reduction on the mothership is reasonable. Obviously, one big change as well is that this structure right over here, the Spire, is now quicker to build, so it's now 50 minerals and 50 gas cheaper. I believe that's the final number we settled on, although at some point when they were running the PTR, I believe it was 200 minerals, 150 gas. Anyways, I believe it's now 150, 150, and it also builds a little bit faster, so it's cheaper here for Rogue to go into the double Spire than it once used to be. That's specifically done to make Muta play a little bit more viable. But in this particular instance, that is not what we're going to be seeing here. From, well, the Zerg. For now, though, we've got ourselves a nice macro game. Yes, Zoun ended up losing the 4th base, but he's got it back up and running. And he is now going to go and, well, settle on this this late-game Skytle's army, right? I mean, it's added... There's more and more of these units added into the mix. We do have some Archons as well, some Immortals. He's slow pushing his way to a 5th. This used to be... And there we go, Ultras. Dude, I want to see Microbial Shroud. Please. We need to start the research, by the way, now. Anyway, this used to be the playstyle that Zerg players absolutely hated. I believe it's now weaker than it used to be. I believe that this is an army composition that is easier to deal with for Zergs than it once used to be. Now, obviously, it's not going to be easy by any stretch. But we did see Protoss win the vast majority of the late games on the new patch. Or on the old patch, rather. And I think on the new patch it's probably going to be slightly different. At least if I interpret all of the changes correctly. But, alright, Ultras and Microbial Shroud. If you want to go for Microbial Shroud in 2025 right now, you actually need to research the ability. When they first made the changes, so again, Microbial Shroud, it used to reduce the damage from flying units by 50%, and now it does that. In addition, though, it also reduces the damage of ranged units by 50% too. So what you do is you throw it onto your own troops, and it then reduces the damage that they take from both ranged as well as air. You need to research the ability, however. So if Rogue wants to use it, he needs to get it done. Here we go. Cloaking Field gets activated. Rogue trying to come in from as many different angles as possible. Zoundo backing up through this choke point once again. Ultra Cavern is going to be researching the chitinous plating upgrade. We have more and more corruptors. Double Nidus network also coming up here for the Zerg. Zoun is trying to do the classic... well, I guess it's just a headbutt strategy, right? We're effectively trying to pummel our opponent to death. And this is certainly an army composition that still needs to be respected. The corruptor count is not big enough right now. Rogue, though, is going to try and solve that here in just a moment with 17 additional corruptors popping out of those cocoons right now. Adding on a load of static defense here as well on the right. Keep in mind, by the way, that a lot of these changes are indeed a little bit random, and some of the bug fixes do seem to be all over the place. Some of the new bugs introduced are also kind of funny. This has always been the case. It's not just, you know, that with this change, suddenly the game has a bunch of changes that were never supposed to be there. No, it's always been the case whenever Blizzard did any sort of patching, back in the day too, they would constantly be having issues with that. And I'm actually quite happy to see how quickly, whoever's doing this at Blizzard, I don't know, but I'm very happy to see how fast they've been making updates. So, for some time, we used to get balance changes to the game, and then Blizzard would almost go AFK for like a half year. So if something was broken, like for example the Cyclone, right? If something was broken, it would just be in the game. And that's how we play the game now. But we've had about a dozen updates, I think, over the last 2 weeks. And whoever's working on it, shout out to you. Thank you very much for, yeah, keeping this game alive, because it's important. Here we go, though. Zoun is jumping on another expansion. Lurkers, Corruptors, Zerglings trying to go in, but man, the storms, the time warps, all of this is gonna hurt really bad. Zoun is gonna lose the mothership, though. Archons are underneath. Do we have enough energy still for some storms? Replace supply, by the way, is going to be spent onto Ultralisks. Ultralisks and a greater Spire coming up right now, too. Rogue wants to go Ultra Brute Lord in the late game. Usually those are not units you produce, but I don't know, man. Do you really want to play Ultras without Microbial Shroud? Maybe. He doesn't even have the armor upgrades yet. This is only the +2. Researching right now inside of the Evo chamber. Nidus network is coming up. Nice positioning right there of the photon cannon. You know it's an exciting time, right? When you have to scroll through the patch notes. Oh, this is also different. Ugh. Ugh. Look at the observer. It's naked. It's a nude observer. Weird. So, when you siege up the observer right now, it loses its cloaking, but it gains substantially more range. I don't know if I like it. I feel like it's one of those changes that is specifically designed to nerf Hero. Hero may be a little bit too... all-army hotkey focused. I'm looking forward to seeing Hero fly all of his observers, because he's probably not going to use that observation mode very often. I'm looking forward to seeing his observers join in with every single fight again. Anyway. Second mothership coming up. Neural Parasites coming up. And look at that! Microbial Shroud is queued up. This ability, I think it's like 100 minerals, 100 gas, and it's like 100 seconds. So initially when they first introduced the PTR, it didn't have a research. And it turned out within about a day that there were timing attacks that were just unbeatable. You would basically make like Infestors and a bunch of Hydras and go for a timing attack and then throw the cloud onto your Hydras and they would just not die. Especially to like Marine Marauder. It's actually very interesting right now to see Hydras with Microbial Shroud engage against Marine Marauder. Marine Marauder doesn't do anything, it seems. They kind of look like they're a bunch of sentries trying to tickle the Hydralisk to death. It's an exciting time to be a StarCraft fan. Either way, Zoun is adding on 2 additional Stargates yet again. So we're going up to a grand total of 5, I think. Yeah. We have the Blink upgrade as well coming up. The teleportation upgrade right there for the Dark Templar. I'm liking the approach across the board a little bit better here from Zoun, though. Zoun clearly... or sorry, from Rogue. Rogue clearly messing around with the new changes a lot more. At least experimenting a bunch. Zoun mostly going for the tried and true strategy from the previous patch. And while that's not a bad idea, of course, trying to see how the good old stable build now functions, he's not making as many changes as I would have liked to see. I do believe there are some new timing attacks, for example, as well, available to Protoss, but maybe it'll be something that we'll see in the next game of this series. Hydras and Lurkers going in towards the left. +3/+3 armor is researching. Ultras are now available, but they're still AFK for now. I think they're waiting for Microbial Shroud energy, and then also for, well, actual armor upgrades. Well, he's going to send them in for a moment. Just trying to see if he can deal some potential counter-aggression. Okay. Rogue actually getting some good damage done, though. It almost feels to me like he wants to trade out these troops over here. Ultras, ooh, chasing down a bunch of High Templar. Mistakes there from Zoun. Zoun, of course, was the one knocking down those rocks here on the top section of those mineral fields. Nidus network did indeed allow some of the units to escape. And there's the Infestors coming. Okay, so will Microbial Shroud be broken? Dude, I am so excited. We have the double Immortal production and we have Infestor Ultra. This is exactly the scenario I was trying to describe. Okay, so is this going to be too strong of a Zerg army? I honestly do not know. So the way that the Microbial Shroud damage gets calculated, it means that I think the Immortals go from like dealing about 65 damage an attack to like 28. Something along those lines. It's a very significant damage reduction. But you do need to have Microbial Shroud available. And at this point, he does not. Immortal numbers, though, are nothing to be writing home about at this point in time either. Although he has more joining in. They must be wandering around. Yeah, they're actually separate from the rest of the pack right now. Okay. So, Infestors are here. Ultras are here. Obviously, there's a whole load of other abilities, too. So, it's going to be difficult to look at this engagement in isolation. But let's see. I honestly don't know how this fight is going to go. Here we go. We do have a Microbial Shroud right over there. We have some fungal growths as well. Ultras are indeed chomping through a lot of this. Fungal growth does go down, and I think the Protoss army here is still looking pretty relentless, but Rogue can remax really rapidly. How much did Zoun even lose there? Maybe Zoun lost nothing. Zoun did lose some units. He could remax, but he's not even bothering. There we go. We are going to go into some Immortal and Tempest production. He lost some troops, but that was honestly better for Protoss than I thought it was going to be. Although also a little bit of a messy engagement. Ooh, storming your own units is always a questionable choice. Ugh. Okay, that was certainly an overextension, though. I think Zoun should have gone home a little bit earlier. Dark Templar joined right now by a bunch of Zealots, dealing some damage as well on the other side of the map. Zealot run by in the bottom right, also getting cleaned up. Looks like Zoun, after recalling back to safety, is immediately going to go back in for more. But because the energy has been reduced, right, the energy recharge, he doesn't actually have a lot of storms available. So here we go again. Ultralisks are popping forward. We do have a time warp going down. Can we throw up another, Microbial Shroud? We can go for fungal growths. He doesn't have a lot of detection nearby. These Overseers have to be springing back into motion. What an absolute mess of a game. You can see that the players are also very much so getting used to the new patch. This is not what StarCraft 2 will look like in about a month. We're lacking a little bit of refinement, but you know, we have Microbial Shrouds, we have Neural Parasites, and all of it can deal damage. Ultras, in the meantime, are indeed breaking through, and Rogue is certainly getting the job done right now. There's so much room for improvement, though. Not just for the Protoss, but also certainly for the Zerg. A lot of these engagements were sloppy. The overextension there from Zoun was entirely unnecessary, too. We do get... Is that the Oracle from the early game? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe you wanted to add it into the mix again with those Tempest numbers going up. But either way, fungal growth here. I honestly think the Infestor is going to be the new unit to pay attention to. Microbial Shroud, Neural Parasite, and fungal growth. All of it is phenomenal. We have a Zealot run by all the way in the top section of the map. But this is... I mean, it's killing a hatchery, but this is Zoun on his last legs. He just doesn't have the supply count to really get this going. And GG gets called. It's Rogue who obtains the victory in game number 1. Next up, we find ourselves on a White Rabbit. I didn't even really talk about the map much in that previous game, but I quite liked it. I think it was, yeah, good enough, certainly. The maps, by the way, have been getting quite a few updates too. It's what happens when you have pro gamers playing on it. Suddenly you realize that there are some issues that need to be addressed as soon as possible. I've seen some quick fix additions of certain maps and other changes that needed to be made, but across the board, White Rabbit also looking pretty standard. Now, if we do need a map number 3 in this particular series, it is going to be on a map called Mothership, which I'm secretly hoping that Zoun is going to be winning this one. Mostly just because Mothership is one of the most interesting maps that was made by the map makers, one of the finalists again from the Team Liquid map contest. Man, they are really steering things up, right? Sometimes the StarCraft 2 meta can be quite stable. And while some people call that boring, I disagree. I think it's nice to see some refinement as well, but there is a certain time limit, I think. Maybe twice a year or so, having a bit of a shake-up is nice to see. At least once a year, with maybe like a map pool change twice a year, something like that to keep things interesting. But right now we're having both a massive map pool update and then simultaneously the biggest changes to the multiplayer version of the game that we have seen in years. Everything is going to have to be reinvented. And you know what? Serral will still win every tournament. I think that's the only constant we will have. But anyways, it does seem that across the board, Zerg is a little bit more powerful now than it used to be. At least, again, if you interpret the changes properly. Okay, so what exactly did they change about Protoss? I have the list right here in front of me. So first off, the energy recharge ability, like I said, it has been changed. So long story short, you cannot as easily do hallucinated Phoenix scouting, for example. You can't as easily, Twilight Council, go into, say like I don't know, like an Oracle opener. All of that is slightly worse. Mothership movement speed has been reduced. So the Mothership itself moves quite a bit slower. Obviously, it always steers around kind of like a boat. It doesn't seem to have brakes. It's got a massive turning radius. So you do have to be quite cautious. Generally speaking, that means not using the all army hotkey all too much. Size storm changes are very significant. It's going to be better against lurkers, better against siege tanks, that sort of thing. But not quite as lethal against, for example, like mass Zergling-based armies, because Zerglings will just run through the storm, and since the storm itself deals slightly less damage, and the Zerglings should only be in there for a second, it does change that dynamic quite a bit. The size storm radius has been changed, the range has been reduced. Dark Templar, by the way, once more have less of a blink delay. It's, by the way, a Glaive Adept opener here from Zoun. Not something that has been adjusted. But Dark Templar, whenever you used to blink with them, they would have about a second where they were just sitting around. Right now, they can attack again after 0.25 seconds. So you blink the Dark Templar, and then pretty much immediately, they will be able to, well, usually destroy something like a planetary fortress. That is where that use is most common, and it's going to give the opponents less time to react. Roach Warren opener this time around from Rogue. He did not go for that in the previous game at all. Yeah, I guess he hasn't seen too much, but maybe just noticing where the Chrono Boost went, and maybe he realizes that this is something that Zoun likes to do. Zoun, obviously, in that series I recently covered of him going up against Raynar, has been messing around a lot with these Twilight Council openers, also in the previous patch. So this is something that we can go ahead and have a look at. The Stasis Ward also has been changed, by the way, on the Oracle. I was just trying to think what else has been changed. Stasis Wards used to last 170 seconds, which is an absurdly long time. Right now, they last 90 seconds. So it's still something that is noteworthy. But it is something that is, yeah, not quite as crazy as it used to be. Here is the Adept, though, coming in. Rogue is already making units. He must have had a glimpse of maybe the Prism moving out. Here we go. Now, there is a Roach Warren, and there are plenty of links. Rogue's economy is already worse than Zoun's. I don't think you really need to commit here too much, but Zoun disagrees. He is bringing that Sentry again. I love this, man. So he's going to bring the Sentry into the main base to try and force field the ramp. So the idea is to try and shade up towards the high ground. Oh god, this is failing miserably. Wow, he just got absolutely massacred. Wow. The idea is to shade up into the high ground and then drop the sentry off over here and force field the ramp. An absolute disaster here for Zoun, losing everything here. And the most important issue here for the Protoss right now is the fact that he doesn't have a third. So he did all of this as a 2-base push. Normal timing for a third base is like, 4 minutes at latest. Now we're 5.5 minutes in. He lost those units and his economy is garbage. Perfect defense, of course, from Rogue. Clearly, he has seen those games from the Masters, or the Maestros, rather, of the game tournament. Maybe he's played against Zoun as well, actually, since then, because, at least for me, that was the first time I've seen Zoun do it, and clearly Rainer was also not expecting it. We have the black and green theme, by the way, right here on White Rabbit, which I believe is a Matrix reference, right? Not a bad idea. These logos, by the way, are because this is from a tournament sponsored by them. The final versions of the maps, the latter editions of the maps, will not have those sponsorship boxes on it, in case you're wondering. And I am certainly not getting paid for it. Oh well. I guess I'll have the logo in the... Yeah, it's okay. It's alright. Alright, so Zoun has to go back to the drawing board, but the problem for him now is that everything is slow. Third Nexus is slow, follow-up here is slow. Now we are going... Immortal Sentry. Curious change. What is Rogue going for in the meantime, though? I quite like the aggressively positioned Spore Crawlers. That's the Spore Crawler in the main base that he previously used to zone against that War Prism drop. Here we go. Immortal Sentry moving out around the map. Rogue actually doesn't see it. This is because we are on a map that he hasn't played on before, I guess, or at least not a whole lot. So this army actually from Zoun is big. It's a bit weird to go for this follow-up all-in, but Rogue only just now realizes as the army is approaching the creep that, yeah, we have a big push imminent right here for the Protoss. And honestly, this is an army that can certainly pack a punch. It all comes down to the corrosive biles and the force fields. Oh my god, he just biled himself because of the force fields, forcing him through. That is not what we need to have. Lovely micro here by Zoun. Those Immortals deal so much freaking damage as well against the Roaches and the Ravagers. Zoun somehow, some way making this work. He keeps on threatening here with these Adept Shade buys. Maybe at this point he can actually commit. I don't think he will, though. Yeah, drones are going to be pulled away as well. And Zoun, I mean, he had one opportunity, one shot. I think he got a little bit lucky as well because Rogue just didn't have a spotter unit on the left side of the map, so he just didn't know. Right now the sentries are out of energy though, and they are still in front of the army, which I find very risky. Better cycle those to the back or put them in the Prism. Lost one of the Immortals as well. We had a gross overextension there from Zoun in the previous game. Let's not do another one of those over here. Now the Adepts do commit. Of course, they still have the Glaives research. Man, Zoun, by the way, has a third Nexus, but he's only got 46 probes. So he's barely got enough economy for 2 bases. At this point, the main is going to be running low, so I'm guessing he has transferred some drones over there, or some probes, but... Man, Zoun has been... I really like what Zoun has been cooking up lately. We've had a few series now like this, where he is going full bananas. He's like, how can I be as big a clown as I can possibly be? How do I make this game a bit of a mess? You know what? We have 2 Immortals right now, 2 low HP Immortals inside of a low HP, medium HP War Prism. It's a bit odd. We're finally going into Blink as well. That's also a little bit odd. But Zoun, with all of that strange decision-making, has evened up this game very, very nicely. Rogue clearly not expecting it whatsoever. Now, I do believe we need Storm here before too long. This is just one of those weird positions, man, where... Do you have enough to deal with the Zerg counterattack? Luckily, he did keep 2 Immortals alive. It's a shame he lost all of those sentries because they were face tanking at the front. The Immortals are going to be an absolute necessity, though. I would love to see them retargeted onto the roaches and the ravagers. One gateway is going to go down. A couple of corrosive balls are eaten, but I think it's fine. Okay, we really need to stop eating the corrosive balls, man. But likewise, though, Zerk is losing a lot of stuff. And keep in mind, Rogue is doing this off of 41 workers. So it's not quite an all-in here for the Zerk. But it is certainly something that is meant to deal damage. Zoun forcing himself to go all-in earlier is now forcing the semi-all-in from the opponent. I love the Overlord dropping a little bit of creep here. Nice micro, though, with the Prism. Really focusing all of his attention here on some of that Immortal micro. Losing one of them here in the process, but that was certainly a unit that already paid its value. Cybercore goes down. That means no more Adepts, no more Stalkers, which is awkward because those are the only two units that he has upgraded with the Twilight Council. No charge yet available. And I guess we are gonna warp in some Zealots awkwardly. He's also losing a bunch of gates, but he already did make a whole load of additional ones inside of the main base when he went for that previous attack. Man, Zoun really taking a page out of Hero's playstyle, right? When you think of crazy Protoss players, you don't generally think of Zoun. But Zoun is certainly showing us why are we not going charge? That he is also capable of playing that style. Picking up some of the units, trying to chase down the faster moving Zerg army with some pickup micro. +1 coming up. Can we please get charge? I think charge and Templar archives are the way to go. He's still busy chasing, though. Don't lose the Prism with 2 Immortals. No. Okay. Don't take that out of Hero's playbook, okay? We can copy pretty much anything Hero does, but that's not what we probably should be copying. Really? We go Robo Bay? Now, that is not what I expected. Disruptors, generally garbage against Zerg. So you have to go Colossi. But Colossi deal bonus damage against light units, which roaches and ravagers are not. So, I don't know. Maybe it's for gravitic drive. Maybe we want prism speed? I highly doubt it. Honestly, more Immortals here is more better. Either way, we have another push here from Rogue, who still has not added on a drone ever since that previous attack over at his start. Nice pickup micro again, though, keeping those Immortals alive and at least making them live up to their name. The Prism here is trying its very best to keep this going. Probes are pulled away as well, and I think Zoun defends another attack. Sick games. An absolute bloodbath here on White Rabbit. We're gonna go into more sentries and... Okay. Finally also into charge. Such a good upgrade to have. So what's this for? Colossus? Colossus. There's no way. If you can go Storm, should you not always go Storm rather than Colossus? I mean, it's going to force out a response. So what are the actions here that Rogue can go for? Well, the old school response to playing against this type of unit composition from Protoss is to go Corruptors. That's what people used to do back in the day. Ever since the introduction, though, of the Viper, that has been the absolute go-to. And the reason why Colossus play is not very common in this matchup. If you get a couple of Vipers out, you can just abduct the Colossi, and it's too big of an investment. Honestly, as a Zerg player, when you see a Robo Bay in general from the Protoss, you always go Vipers. Either it's Disruptors, or it's Colossi, or I guess it's like a Prism with speed. In all instances, Vipers are great. So, Zoun, I mean, he's gonna be able to at least get a Colossus out. Rogue hasn't seen the main base, literally this entire game. He hasn't ever looked for it. So maybe he can catch his opponent off guard, but this is a big investment. Are we gonna hide the Colossus? No, we're not. No, we're really not. I think maybe hiding them in the main base and hoping for the best is a good idea. Obviously, Rogue's economy has been garbage, right? So I think Zoun realizes how much damage he did earlier, and he believes that the opponent hasn't rebuilt the eco. And one of the problems is that it's difficult to make a transition to Hive off of less than like 65 workers or so. Now the Colossus is indeed spotted. What can Rogue do? I think it's too late to go Hive. At this point, yeah. The Protoss is already marching. The ranged upgrade on the Colossus is done. More and more of them are added into the mix. Zoun going for some of the bases around the perimeter. Dude, the Prism has been the absolute MVP. Can we get some force fields, please? Force fields into the corner? I don't know, man. It all feels a little bit risky. Maybe recall? I don't know. Do we really want to be caught out here against units that have so much range like Ravagers? My god, now we recall? We could have done this 10 seconds ago. Come on, man. Where were we going? There's nowhere to walk. Nice movement, of course, by Rogue, but a grand blunder there from Zoun. I think you should have seen that coming from a mile away, because it was the only play available for the Zerg. Zoun losing a load of units there in the process. Rogue, who's been, by the way, effectively an all-in economy since like minute 7. Ever since that push with the Immortal Sentry over here, he has added on like 8 workers. He's got less than 50. That's weird. Normally, Zergs have like 70 at this point in the game. Well, maybe the Roaches and the Ravagers can still be halted, though. Those shield batteries are still putting in the work. Okay. And as the dust is settling, I still like this position better for Zoun. Zoun has tier 3 units, and Rogue is kind of stuck with like his early game army. Rogue clearly never intended on teching up either. Well, he went for a Baneling nest. I think Banelings are an absolute terrible unit here. Main problem is that they're just not cost effective. He doesn't have the roly-poly upgrade on them either, so we don't even get the plus 5 HP. It's a little bit odd. I gotta say, by the way, the map is actually pretty sick. I quite like this. This is weird, but it's fun to see, right? With the rocks over here in the back. This expansion feels so far away, though, for Protoss. I think the forward one over here makes more sense. Maybe even the one over here. Okay. So the Hive is coming. Vipers are clearly what you need to do. Vipers, by the way, have been changed a little bit. I don't really know exactly if this is intended behavior or a new bug that Blizzard introduced. But right now, when you have a group of Vipers and you want to use the consume ability onto, like, say, for example, an Evo chamber or a lair or whatever, right? It now, if you have a control group of Vipers, you use the consume ability once. It will consume with all of them with a single click. It used to be that you had to like either rapid fire or give the command multiple times. But now it does a mass consumption all at the same time. I didn't see this listed anywhere. But it is changed behavior. So, I don't know. Is it a bug? Is it a feature? I don't know. But I think it's better. So, it's fine. Makes it slightly less tedious. Well, Rogue has smashed his piggy bank. And he has afforded 1 Viper. Zoun knows that he needs to keep pushing. The supply count of Rogue is starting to grow. Problem, of course, here for the... We do have 3 Vipers, by the way. Problem here for the Zerg is that it's mostly Roach Ravager. So his supply count is going to be a little bit inflated. Look at this. Zoun waiting for a trap. Adrenal Glands also coming up. We have +1 melee and Adrenal Glands. This all is very strange. Normally we'd be at least at +2 melee right now, but... Rogue trying to deal with this very weird game in the best of his abilities. Zoun has indeed now got that base up, right? Which is important. Zoun, by the way, also not really adding on a whole lot of workers here in total. There's the yoink. Ooh, a yoink into a big blink forward as well. We have hallucinated Colossi. Yeah, which one's real? Well, now the Overseers are gone, so we can't really tell. Oh my god, man. What has Zoun been cooking up lately? Hallucinated Colossus. So how do you know which one you need to abduct? Rogue is broke. As long as the Overseers get sniped, he can't tell. Look, this is what he sees, right? He doesn't see the little progress bar above the HP. You gotta abduct the right one. At this point, it's almost like a coin flip Viper abduction strat. Which, yeah, I don't think is ideal. Man. I love the mass sentry build so much. We've had 24 dead sentries. 24. And I feel like at least half of those were preventable. Man, I am becoming the biggest Zoun fanboy. It is lovely to see. He really has been playing some good StarCraft. That previous game felt a little bit out of character. Just very passive, I suppose. Maybe just testing out the waters a little bit. Oh my god. He got the wrong one! Okay, he got the right one too. 50% success rate. He didn't even bother attacking the one that was real. Or fake, rather. Okay, now he realizes that it was indeed fake. Dude, Zoun is actually doing this. Zoun is actually doing this. What an absolute monster. Probes! Oh my god, what? Zoun. Zoun pulled the boys. He pulled the boys as a Protoss player. But like, why? Why did we not pick up the Colossus with the Prism? I've got so many questions. Maybe he's not doing this. Hold up right now. Maybe he's throwing it. He just pulled the boys. Why? I don't get it. They're tanking a slight bit of damage. No, I think he's got the numbers. Yeah, he does have the numbers. This Prism, by the way, can we get an MVP award, please, in StarCraft 2? This has been the same Prism ever since... I think it is anyways. Ever since the adept push. Yep, GG gets called. Zoun gets the win. Oh, I'm excited for this one. Final game of this best of 3 series. We find ourselves on Mothership. Now this is another 3-player map. Similar to the idea as Last Fantasy, but I've been told instead it's actually good. Last Fantasy is not a terrible map, but it's also not my absolute favorite. So this is a 1v1 map with 3 spawn locations. Now look at the... So the name is Mothership, right? Look at the minimap. It is clearly played on the back of a giant Protoss capital ship. I just love the fantasy of it. I love the vibe. A Zerg versus Protoss. I don't know if the Zerg should really be able to win this sort of thing, but... Is this something? Kind of looks like a speed-up circle almost, but I doubt it. I think it's just a visual. What's in the middle of the map? It kind of looks like it's not centered, but I guess it is. It's probably just the see-through glass at the bottom that is throwing me off a little bit. And there's like a weird spire over here in the middle. I guess it's just an unbuildable section. Alright, Overlord number 1 did go in the right direction. Probe Scout number 1 did not go in the right direction. Now, I've mentioned all of the changes made to the Protoss. Maybe I can also go over the changes made to the Zerg. So, like I mentioned already, the Spire is cheaper and a little bit quicker to build. Baneling changes are plus 5 HP, which allows them to survive a storm a little bit better. The Microbial Shroud changes, I think, are particularly very good in Zerg versus Terran. Against Bio-Terran especially, but maybe they're going to be phenomenal too. Against, say, for example, like I said, that Immortal Ultralisk unit composition. I think we can get a little bit more... Yeah, the thing about ZVP, right? If you see a Microbial Shroud, you can still just throw a Storm on top of it. Microbial Shroud no longer sticks to units, which it used to do in the previous patch, but nobody still played it, so maybe it's fine. And then I think the last most notable change especially, like there's a couple of minor changes too, but I think the Brute Lord fix really is a very significant one. The Brute Lord change just makes them substantially more powerful. I actually think if in the previous game, a Rogue could have gone up to Brute Lords, it would have been a phenomenal choice. Like, they're really good against any sort of ground-based army. Now, most of the time in the late game, off Protoss versus Zerg, Protoss goes Skytoss, in which instance, yeah, Brute Lords are kind of mediocre. So the big change made to the Brute Lord is a bug fix that you know, like sometimes when you see the Brute Lord attack, the little Bruteling that they throw onto the ground, it kind of floats on the back of their body for a little while, and then it hangs in the front for a little while, and then it fires. Sometimes it does it much quicker, however. And that apparently is not intended behavior. It's been in the game ever since the very beginning. But they've now made it so that it's reliably always throwing the children right away. So it just immediately throws it forward. And effectively, you can micro the unit better now. And you can actually make use of the long range much better too. Because you can reliably anticipate that there's going to be Brootlings on the ground. Now, because that apparently turned out to be too strong, at least with like the 2 days of playtesting, they've decided to nerf the Brute Lord movement speed again. Back to the value, I believe, that it once used to be like 5+ years ago. Anyway. It's all very interesting. We, by the way, have gone back to that Oracle opener here. Man, this map is gorgeous, isn't it? I really like it, dude. Like, this section over here is something else. I've never seen this on a StarCraft map. I don't think this is something you just take from the editor straight up. Somebody actually made this. There is like a force field outline over here too, so I think that's indicative of flying units not being able to pass towards the corners of the map. Because this would be, look at this, like it's just a giant amount of dead space in each of the corners. So I'm guessing that those are, yeah, I think that's what this little, you see the little force field? I think that's a path blocker for any sort of flying unit. Anyway, adept push coming in here. Third Nexus coming up at a much more conventional time this time around. We have a Twilight Council together with a Forge, so Zoun going back to the good old tried and true. Baneling Nest again here for Rogue. Very quick Baneling Nest. In the previous game, he decided to go for that Roach Warren, and he got a lot of value out of that one. In this game, as well as the one that he won, game number 1, he decided to skip it. So, quick Baneling Nest is a little bit odd. But maybe now because of Microbial Shroud, or not Microbial Shroud, because of the Centrifugal Hooks research, granting plus 5 HP, maybe it's actually good. 5 drones have gone down, by the way, so far, which is really lovely. Yeah, the force field is kind of... What? He's flying outside of it. Yeah, I think it's just mostly indicative that you can't go all the way to the corners. Because that would be pretty silly. Okay. So, quick Templar archives, this time around for Zoun. I wonder if he's going to go for a more active approach than what we saw in game number 1. Because in game number 1, I think he played well, but he just played it a bit too passively. And of course we had that big overextension where it's just a little bit memey. But yeah, we are indeed going to go into the quick Psy Storm yet again. Infestation Pit coming up here for Rogue. Second Evo Chamber as well. Will we go straight into the armor upgrade? Or is this going to be for missile? Normally when you go double upgrades as Zerg in this matchup, you go missile and melee. Because ultras are garbage and armor upgrade therefore doesn't matter. But if you ever want to think about going ultras, you really need to get the +3 ground carapace. So what is it going to be? Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. We do not have a Hydra then. I think it's armor. Okay, apparently it's nothing. He's been busy. Hey, it's armor! Let's go! Rogue experimenting. Infestation Pit has been used to go into a hive. Zergling run by attempted at least up north. He is going into Overlord speed right now as well. Stargate number 2 coming up. Zoun actually just playing it super passively again. Losing this base would really suck for him, but he is going to be able to keep it around. Wait, can you walk over that? Ooh. Okay, he did force in all of... Oh my god! Sorry, I need to look at this engagement again. I'm just going to back up a little bit further. So it seems like you can indeed walk over this little bit of dead space. Yeah, curious. I want to pay special attention here to the storm. Zoun clearly liking how long the storm lasts, but he also didn't quite realize how long it lasts because he stood in his own storm. Normally it's gone by now. My god, he stormed all of his own units to death. Yeah, this is not entirely correct. Look at the units lost. There may be a bug as well, where like if you storm your own units, they don't show up over here. Because I saw an Oracle dying to his own storm. Huh. Alright, we're going back to the Dropper Lords. Hive is just about to be done. I know there has to be at least one co-op player out there in StarCraft 2 that has only ever... Oh, Ultra Rush. Okay. That's only ever played co-op. For many of the co-op commanders, Storm will actually heal your units. They will replenish their shields. There has to be at least one or two Protoss players out there that thought that that is how it worked as well in multiplayer. And I would like just to imagine somebody storming their own units thinking it was going to heal them back up. Yeah, dude, it's weird how there's a little bridge over here. Doesn't feel like there's a little bridge over there. Mostly just a distraction, though, to allow this drop to go in. Dude, we're actually rushing out Ultras. Interestingly enough, he's not doing it with Microbial Shroud. Which I really feel like is the main change. So, what Rogue is really getting value from, I guess, is going to be +5 additional HP. And maybe the fact that Zergling's gonna have a slightly easier time running through the storms, but... it doesn't feel to me like this is that big of a deal. Fleet Beacon coming up. I don't know how I feel about this hyper-passive approach from Zoun. He is basically saying, yo, all I want is 4 bases, and then I'm gonna play SimCity and max out. I don't believe that that is the type of strategy that should be the absolute best. You know what I mean? Zergling drop coming in once again. I think passive-based builds should be like, maybe if StarCraft 2 build orders were like a tier list, I think passive turtley builds should be viable, but they should never be like the best build. I feel like they should always be like an A tier, maybe a B tier level of build. Usually I've noticed over the years whenever there's a passive build, a turtle strat, that is indeed the very best strat to go for. The games just become very slow. Obviously, it's far too early to say. But Zoun clearly believes that it's a very viable approach. Bunch of damage has been done. I think he may have noticed. Ooh. That indeed Ultras are here. Well, if he hadn't yet, he will see them right now. It was either going to be Ultras or Lurkers. In this case, we don't even have a Hydra then. He has been scouting, but not since a little bit. He actually did see the Ultra Cavern building. Ultra drops. Hey, Microbial Shroud. And you know what? We're gonna go from the Neural Parasite upgrade first to Microbial Shroud first. The upgrade takes forever, man. Alright, we do have some Ultralisk drop harass. Not something you see every day. Mama is, by the way, going to be joining the battlefield here in just a moment. Ultras over here trying their best, but they're getting torn apart by a lot of those Immortals, although I say that. Maybe the numbers are good enough, and you know what? At the very least, they are sacrificing their lives, but buying time for the Banelings. Not a lot of micro here from Zoun, but I think it's okay for him in the end. Rogue, by the way, is somebody who's extremely good, especially at the beginning of patches, I feel like. He's always been very creative and very flexible. Like, I'm like the least flexible StarCraft player out there, okay? I suck at the beginning of new patches. But Rogue always somebody that has been performing at the absolute highest level for, well, like 15 years at this point. Maybe a little bit less. I don't remember if he played in like the early days of Wings of Liberty, but either way, he's always quick to adjust and he has got a very wide variety in playstyles. I feel like it makes him one of the scariest opponents, especially at this time. So we do indeed have the double Nidus. We do have all of the Infestor upgrades, but we are not going to go into... Yeah, he's just keeping the Zerglings alive for the most part. We're not going to go into the Infestor play yet. Maybe he's saving that as like another trick. And for my final trick, I present to you the Infestor. For now, it's just Ultralisk Bane, which is kind of curious because this is not a style that has really gotten a whole lot better. I don't really see anything here that would technically make this much better for the Zerg, although I may be overlooking something. I'm trying to think if there's any change that like makes this style all of a sudden more viable. Yes, the Microbial Shroud makes this more viable, but we haven't seen it yet. This is something that he could have been doing in the previous patch already, and I think it's about as good. Maybe it's because of the new map as well, right? Zoun clearly not always positioned well for this sort of thing. He is, by the way, gonna go for this forward expansion right now on Mothership. Second Robo facility coming up. I guess the big change is that the Storm is... It's gonna make it easier for Zerglings to run through it. That's the big change, I guess. We're already going armor upgrades for the Spire, so he's a little bit afraid of a potential Skytles transition, but I think that's like the furthest thing from Zoun's mind right now. Zoun is having an Ultralisk problem, and he needs to address that first. You certainly cannot go... maybe you can... Oh, no. Oh, God. Yeah, a little late right there, Zoun. Got a little too aggressive on the old army hotkeying, and now suddenly you have a Nidus Worm infestation in the main base, too. Robo facility's getting targeted. Honestly, I kind of love it. Zealot run by here to buy some time, but not free. Yeah, maybe the thought process here for Rogue is that Ling Bane in general is just slightly more viable now against the newer version of Storm, and maybe like something like Lurker, something a little bit more stationary is worse. Still, Zoun's army is big, and it needs to be respected. Because, yes, Rogue has been winning all of these little backstab engagements, right? And he's been trying his very best to hurt the opponent. But across the board, he has been avoiding any main engagement. My god. 40 Banelings. In a straight-up engagement, Zoun's army is still menacing. But that's exactly what Rogue is trying to avoid. Death by 1,000 cuts is the strategy. Well, maybe he needs to engage right now, though, because the Banelings are here. Keep in mind, though, that Banelings are really, really, really bad against Archons. Oi, oi, oi. Yeah, no, that was a bloodbath right there. It takes about, I think, 22 Banelings to kill an Archon. Obviously, that deals splash damage, but... Rogue has some money in the bank, but it's not like he's the richest Zerg player on the planet. That would be Cyril. Although with Finnish income taxes, I don't know. Either way, I think it's better, probably better to earn like, you know, a couple $1 million in StarCraft, or if you live in Korea, than it would be in, but I don't know. Ultras are being remaxed though. He's going, yeah, like a dozen Ultralisks over here. Zealot run by, also putting in some work. And that engagement with the Banelings was exactly what Zoun was hoping for. Zoun, though, not really able to go into a Skytles army. So that is another thing that Rogue is achieving with this threat. Yeah, there have been a bunch of Tempests, but really not that much. Well, that's cursed. What the Oh, no. Sorry, I know there's movement over here at the bottom, but apparently that is what a Nidus worm looks like under an MRI scan. Something's very wrong. Sorry, let me back up a little bit. Weird, man. That's what it looks like when you want to insert the worm. Oh my god, it comes knocking as well. That's crazy. All right, anyways. Let's see. Honestly, I thought it would be shorter. I thought it was just, like, the head of the... Anyways. Corruptor. Trying his very best against this flying group of units. The Mothership's cloaking field is nice and all, but the Ultras are going to certainly be able to bite through all of this together with the Zerglings. Yeah, this is cursed. Maybe that's why we don't have a lot of those glass platforms. Lovely map, dude. I gotta say, Mothership... Again, statistics are going to be... Yeah, it's going to take a while before this stabilizes, but... Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I've always enjoyed the crazier maps in StarCraft 2 as a content creator, as a commentator, as a StarCraft fan. I think having variety in the map design is really critical. And this is a map that is certainly out there. Maybe it's terrible, though. Who knows? But I kind of love it. Man, these naked observers are weird, eh? They kind of blend into the background right here on this map, but... Another Zergling run by coming in. Rogue's army is still big, but there's 9 Immortals now. 9 Immortals, if they are microed well against Ultras, will tear this apart. We are going to see a recall now with some of the units, though. Zoun mostly chilling. You know what Rogue really is missing here? Microbial Shroud. I don't understand why we don't have it. In a straight-up engagement, it seems like the absolute no-brainer. You can reduce the damage of the Immortals by more than 50%. Why would you not want to do that? That's an insane value. I have also learned over the years that many pro gamers don't really read patch notes. I know this sounds insane, but many of them just sort of glance at them and then hope for the best. I don't know in which category a rogue is. You would imagine it's worth studying it for like 10 minutes, but... He's been researching it though, right? So he knows that it's changed. He just isn't using it. Like, he's been getting all of those upgrades. I think like 3 Infestors here. Okay, maybe like 5 Infestors here would be sick. Greater Spire instead. If we look at the resources lost... Yeah, so sure, Zoun has been losing a lot of bases, a lot of economy. But it's not like Rogue is super rich. I mean, he's certainly richer here than the Protals. But this is a unit composition that's expensive and needs to be replenished. In a straight-up engagement, Zoun's army is still better, I think. And while his economy may not be that good, neither is Rogue's, really. Brute Lords, though, are a great choice. If he can get, like, 12 Brute Lords out, I think 8 to 12 Brutes, this Protoss army is going to have to be careful. Is that the Oracle from the early game? 31 kills. Ay, ay, ay. Zealot run by again down south. Rogue is really struggling getting his economy back up. He's got a few bases sprinkled around the map. Man, Zoun, can we like make a couple of photon cannons or something here? I feel like pretty much all the worker kills have been in this base, but... He's hunting. He's hunting for a main engagement right now. Brute Lords are coming, though. And again, those Brutes, they are way better than they used to be. In this version of the game, they still have their speed upgrade, or their speed improvement. In the current version of the game, again, that has been reduced. I think it's about a 10% or so movement speed reduction, so it's not huge, but... Man, he's struggling against those Ultras. Hi, Templar, no! Okay. Could have been a problem. The Immortals were there, though. But Rogue is purposely giving up some of those troops. He's getting rid of them to open up supply for Brute Lords. And I don't think Zoun knows. Very soon, Zoun is finally gonna get what he's been hunting for this entire time. He's going to get a straight-up engagement from the opponent. Rogue's been running circles around him for the better part of 20 minutes. But soon he will get the main engagement, and it's going to be against a unit composition that he does not expect. Here's the Brute Lords. Look how quickly they're throwing their kids now. Oi, oi, oi. Ultra Brute Lord is good again. GG. That was one of the most entertaining series of StarCraft I've seen in a while. Obviously, it's a lot of novelty. Especially that game number 2 was phenomenal, but it is going to be very interesting to see how all of these changes will actually settle in the meta. Maybe we're going to see some of these maps again in the future on the ladder and in tournaments therefore as well. Maybe some of the changes turn out to be too much. Maybe the nerfs turn out to be too great. Who knows at this point in time, but it's a good time though to be a StarCraft fan, that's for sure.